10:30. 10:30. This is a special meeting of the Council specifically to consider the outcome of the examination report on the proposed local development plan. I've no other business for this meeting, but I would acknowledge that a notice of motion was received from Councillor Scobie and Foster on Friday of last week. This will be dealt with at the next meeting of the Council, as will the deferred notice of motion from Councillors McClung and Geddes. Can I have the Sederunt apologies?
Thank you, Leader. There are 41 members present. I have apologies from Councillor Dick, McCautry, McGregor, Marshall and Wood.
Mr. Haswell said he would pass on apologies for Councillor Diggle. Mr. Haswell, sorry.
I'm not recording an apology from Councillor Diggle. I'm going to record a declaration of interest from Councillor Diggle.
Okay, thank you.
Your apologies?
No, it's regarding my deferred motion. I understand that it's been deferred. However, I would just like to point out that my seconder has cancelled a dental appointment to be here. I should have been in Glasgow Royal having an operation today, which I cancelled to be here.
Leader, I can only apologise to the two members. I wasn't aware of that. I was in correspondence in the middle of last week with Councillor McClung and actually had asked for some clarification. I got that on Monday and I'm just dealing with that. I can only apologise to the members.
Okay, moving on to declarations of interest. Do any members have declarations of interest? Councillor McGregor. Okay.
Thanks, Leader. Declaration of interest. Due to my region-wide business interests, I'll be declaring an interest as I did at the last local development plan meeting in 2013. Okay, I'll be leaving the room.
Joe?
Thank you, Leader. I also declared an interest in the last local development plan and have been advised to do similar today. So I'm declaring an interest based on my husband's business interests.
George?
Thanks, Leader. Declaring an interest in the section about Castle Douglas when it comes up, but only that. Being a shareholder of Wallace Marts, who are involved in Castle Douglas, when I would declare an interest in that.
Okay. Patty?
Yes, just declare an interest for a site in Auchencairn, and if it comes up for discussion, I will leave, but not for anything else.
Graham?
Thanks, Leader. I would declare an interest in the Mid-Galloway housing market area, Creetown, with friendship with both the applicants.
Okay. Anyone else? No? If we can move on to item 3, this is the local development plan. It's an important document which will guide our council as planning authority in terms of future land use and development within Dumfries and Galloway until 2024. The plan has been fully consulted and 3 hearing sessions were held by the Scottish Government reporters looking at site allocations in Gretna, Dumfries and the wind energy policy. The reporters have now set out their conclusions and recommendations which are legally binding on the Council. There are 67 policies in the proposed LDP, most of which were satisfactory and as far as reporters were concerned. They have recommended a change to 10 policies and these are set out in paragraph 3.5.1 of the report. There are a number of recommendations in the report. The main one asking the Council to agree to the adoption of the LDP after further statutory procedures are set out in paragraph 3.1.4. The report and its appendices contain considerable detail, and in the first instance I'm going to ask Steve and Andrew to deal with any overarching issues which members may have from the report itself. Members? Jane?
Thank you, Leader. I would just like to say that, I don't think I'm probably going to be alone in this. In the whole process, to my mind, seems to me to be less democratic than things have been in the past. And I would just say, as an observation leader at this stage, that to come to a meeting to basically, I think, rubber stamp these. We can comment on them, and I absolutely think we should, Leader, because it's only by commenting on them and teasing out the issues in public here that the public have an opportunity to understand the changes. So I would really ask members to discuss the matter, although we have really minuscule opportunity to change anything, very limited opportunity to change anything. I think it's really important that we tease them out and discuss them. So I would ask for your indulgence in that, Leader.
Okay, Alistair.
Thanks very much indeed, sir. The point on the back of what Councillor Maitland has raised, the point that immediately comes to my mind, and I would be the first to concede, Leader, it's scarcely overarching. Mr Haswell helpfully issued us with correspondence yesterday about an unfortunate incident or instance involving a particular applicant in relation to Creetown, Mr Henderson Caird. Can we have, for my benefit, Leader, if for no one else's, can we have a clear, unequivocal position statement on the back of what was previously issued, to the extent that what took place here is essentially an issue between, sorry, Councillor Nicholl, I'd forgotten, through you, sir. It's essentially an issue between Mr Henderson Caird, his agents, and the reporters unit, and that really, at the end of the day, this is not something that the council have a direct locus in. That's the clarification I'm looking for, Leader. I'm grateful to you.
Steve?
Yes, Leader. Thank you. We did circulate copies of the correspondence exchange that we've had with the reporters unit to advise members of this factual error in the report that has been brought to our attention as a result of inquiries made following publication of the reporter's final report. The clarification that has been received by both ourselves and Mr Henderson Caird is that the reporters unit have acknowledged that their final report contained a factual error in that it referred to the site owner of 2 sites in Creetown as having been consulted but not responding to a further information request, and that in fact was a mistake in the final report, in that Mr Henderson Caird was not consulted by the reporters unit, and so that sentence should never have appeared in the final report, and the reporters unit have admitted that and have asked us to make that information available on our website, to make that information publicly available. So although it is a matter between Mr Henderson Caird as a party, if you like, or as a representor to the plan and the reporters unit, it does become a matter of public interest because the reporters unit have issued this acknowledgement that their final report contained this factual error, which we have a responsibility now to publicise, which we have through our website.
Alistair?
With your leave, sir, I'm grateful. So essentially, Chair, what we're really saying is that, and I'm not trying to appear, to be doing a Pontius Pilate, by washing our hands of it. Essentially, what has happened, or what hasn't happened, Leader, has been singularly unfortunate. This man has not been given the opportunity to make representations. What I personally find somewhat grating, Leader, is the reference from the reporter. It wouldn't really have made any difference anyway. That, I think, is perhaps, to some of us, tending to add insult to injury. But the point I would make, Leader, is that, if Mr Henderson Caird wishes to seek some form of remedy, it would be in another forum, and it would be nothing to do with Dumfries and Galloway Council. I think I'm correct in saying that, sir.
Yep. Okay. Phil?
Thanks, Chair. It's just that I've spotted an error on page 96 in Appendix 2. I presume that the item in the table relating number 28, Stewart HMA local centres, that the word Auchencairn should actually be Chris Michael in there for the settlement overview.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. Apologies for that. That is a typographical error. That should have said Auchencairn and not Crossmichael. Sorry. Other way round. You can see it as me that proofread the paper.
Right, but thanks very much for that, for pointing out firmly. What I intended to do was, kind of take an overarching questions at the moment, and then we'll maybe take Appendix 1 and 2 together, because that's for noting, and if there's any questions within that, then Appendix 3, what I was looking to do was go through that one page at a time, just in case there are any questions. That's from 101 onwards, so you can question, individual pages. So if there are any overarching questions at the moment, before they do that, I think we've got Ian.
Thanks, Leader. It was that particular point I was wanting to bring up. My questions are overarching, but I'll leave that until we went through the detail. There's no questions on Creto.
Okay, Finlay.
Thanks, Chair. I just wanted to clear my head. At this moment, I know we're very limited in what we can actually go back to the reporter with, and it's very unlikely we're going to delay the adoption of this plan. Is this an opportunity for us as councillors to have our concerns minuted at the process that has been taken forward? I also noting some of the issues that will be brought up later in Appendix 1, 2 and 3, because certainly I have concerns that I know we're not going to be able to address directly with the reporter, but I think it's important that some of the process is questioned and that it's minuted that as councillors we're not happy with the way it's been carried out.
Yep. Okay, as I've said, Appendices 1 or 2 are for noting and dealing with the modifications in respect of the strategic environmental assessment and the habitat regulations appraisal. Intended to take them together and officers to answer any questions in both of them. So if there's any questions within that, Jane?
Well, just in terms of process, them being substantially the same, would you mind if we go backwards and forwards and make certain that each of the pages, when you finally go through the one that you're going to, I'm going to have to refer to the first appendix simply because of the wording that the way it was worded. That's the one I went through and made annotations on. Is that all right? Do you see what I'm getting at?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yep. So nothing else in the Appendix 1 or 2 just now then? George?
Thanks, Chair. Just a comment on Appendix 1, page 19, item 5, the economic development. If we go back to the original, it says in paragraph 4.2, after important sectors, insert a new and increasingly significant part of the area's economy is generation of renewable energy. It says in the LDP, page 18, about 4.2, sustainable economic growth is a key element of the plan's vision. Dumfries and Galloway is primarily a rural economy with agriculture, forestry, tourism and food processing being important sectors. So what's being suggested is that they add in that renewable energy is a significant part of the area's economy. I would like a bit of clarification, just how is that justified? If you go back to the LDP and then reference forward to what we're talking about today.
Steve?
Thank you, Leader. Clearly, I'm not able to necessarily justify or defend the reporter's recommendations as such. I can only advise that I suspect that this comment has been put in as a consequence of representations received from the industry, who felt that there should be some recognition of the fact that within Dumfries and Galloway, renewable energy is an important sector of the economy, and that's why the report has put that in. That's the case that has been made by the industry in their representation, and that has been accepted by the reporter.
I find that very difficult to believe, because I can't understand where the economic benefits of wind farms are. They've maybe got one or two employees scattered here and there once they're up and running, but I don't understand the reasoning behind that one.
Okay, right, we'll record that, George.
Just on that point, I remember sitting at a meeting, Pat, a couple of meetings with the South Scotland Economic Forum and the South of Scotland Alliance, where it was put forward very strongly from both councils, from the industry, from the farming and agriculture industry, that whether it's ground source heat pumps, whether it's air source, whether it's hydro, whether it's wind turbine technology, they were all in favour and absolutely encouraged it into Dumfries and Galloway and the Scottish borders. They said it was fundamental to the economy, and I would agree with that entirely.
Okay, right. Okay, Jim.
Thanks, Leader. In relation to page 28, cumulative sensitivity zones. At the bottom of page 28, does the rewording mean that cumulative sensitivity is no longer an issue between neighbouring wind farms or wind turbines, but only between clusters of wind farms?
Steve, do you want to take that?
Yes, Leader, thank you. Clearly what's being referred to here is the proposed or the recommended changes to our wind energy policy IN2, which the reporter has included as part of their recommendations, asking us to revisit and redraw our spatial framework. However, the reporters have retained reference to cumulative sensitivity zones, both in terms of the new policy wording that they're suggesting, where cumulative impacts remains as one of the key features that can figure in our assessment of individual wind farm proposals, and also referring to cumulative sensitivity zones in terms of our spatial mapping. So it's quite clear to me that the reporter is saying that we can continue to refer to cumulative sensitivity both in terms of how we assess individual applications, because it is a criteria that they've suggested, and in terms of our approach to having the spatial framework in the plan redrawn.
Okay, Colin.
Thank you, Leader. Just going back to the point that George brought up a minute ago there, page 19, point 5. I don't know about anybody else, but I would be happier if it read a new and potentially significant part rather than increasingly. Just replace increasingly with potentially. I think that would read better.
Well, Steve, no, we can't really alter this. It's that's why I said the first two are for noting. But so, I mean, however much we would like to alter things, I don't think we can. So it's We were just there for noting Appendix 1 and 2. Steve, you want to make a comment on it?
Yes, I think the issue with Appendix 1 and Appendix 2, this is our assessment of whether the reporter's recommendations fit in terms of our strategic assessment, which is Appendix 1, and our habitats regulation assessment, which is Appendix 2. It's Appendix 3 that really sets out the reporter's findings, and we have also suggested in Appendix 3 a number of consequential modifications and changes that we can make to the wording if we believe that there is a lack of clarity, for example.
Craig.
Thank you, Leader. Page 32 of the papers, point 14, infrastructure, and it goes on to talk about wastewater drainage. I'm just really asking for a bit of clarification on the meaning of this. It reads there that where there's limited or no capacity at the wastewater treatment works, Scottish Water is funded to provide strategic capacity for domestic growth within Scotland. And should any development necessitate an increase to Scottish Water's treatment capacity, an investment project can be initiated. Now, does this mean that, because we have seen in the past in some planning applications that Scottish Water have objected to the development because it hasn't the capacity to serve either the water supply or the wastewater drainage? Does this effectively mean that they cannot now object to developments on that basis, because if it states in here that they are funded by Scottish Government to provide that service, does that take away their ability to object to a development?
Steve?
Leader, my reading of this would not be that it would remove their ability to object to developments, because whilst an investment project can be initiated to undertake the increase and improvement to the network that's being talked about here, it's clear that it's subject to such proposals meeting the approved growth funding criteria. So it wouldn't be guaranteed that Scottish Water would actually be able to be in a position to carry out those upgrades and improvements. So I would imagine they would still retain their ability, they would have to still retain their ability to object to planning applications where they can't do this.
Okay, Jane.
I think probably I'm going to not mention what I was going to mention, because I'll mention it in Appendix 3.
Okay, right. So with that we'll note Appendix 1 and 2, and we'll move on to Appendix 3, which contains the modifications recommended by reporters, and that starts on page 101. So we'll go through that a page at a time, and just if there's any questions, any comments on page 101. We'll give people time to settle down. Find it. It's Appendix 3, page 101. Anything? No? Okay, if we move on to page 102. Alistair?
Thanks, Leader. Just an observation, I'd welcome any comments that Steve or anyone else might wish to make in response. It's Economic Development, paragraph 53. Can that not be said, in fact, the proposed amendment, can that not be said to be just a wee bit prescriptive, to put it mildly?
So you wanted me to comment on that? At the end of the day, this is the reporter's view, and I suppose one of the issues for us is going to be in terms of looking at the council's new economic strategy, for example. To what extent is renewables going to figure as a key sector in the new economic development strategy that is being developed at the moment? At yesterday's EEI committee, there was a report outlining progress on a European-funded project aimed at developing particularly community-based renewables, and I think members certainly of the EEI committee were advised of the significant progress that's being made in terms of developing an approach to community-led renewables. And as part of that project, I think it has become apparent that we are probably some way ahead of a number of other regions in terms of the rollout and deployment of a wide range of renewables technologies, because obviously renewables is we're not just talking about turbines and wind farms. This is a whole range of potential and opportunities, including solar PV, hydro schemes. I think it is a fact that we've already got installed across our region a significant capacity in terms of renewable energy generation. Our economic development colleagues have just developed a programme to try to increase the supply chain impacts of that rollout to try to ensure that more locally based businesses can get benefits from that increased rollout and deployment. So bearing all of that in mind, it's probably not an unreasonable statement to recognise that it is a growing part of our local economy.
In other words, Leader, the response would be from Steve that he doesn't think that it is a bit too prescriptive. Well, I've raised the issue. I've heard the official's response. I'll live with that, sir. Thank you.
Okay, if we move on to page 103. No. Page 104. Some of these pages overlap into others, with dealing with the minerals, but I'll still take them per page at a time just for clarity, if you want to bring. Go on, yeah.
Yeah, that gives us 2 goes at raising it, doesn't it?
So it gives you a way of raising issues on individual pages, yes. Not previous page. So. Okay, page 105. Okay, page 106. Page 107. Jane?
This is a genuinely open question, and forgive me, I've just gone back one. Historic environment, in that you see in policy HE6, historic gardens and landscapes and designed landscapes. After paragraph B, insert a new paragraph. Proposals that would have a detrimental effect on the specific quality, character or integrity of a garden or designed landscape will not be approved unless it's demonstrated that the proposal has benefits of overriding public interest. What is that actually really getting at? And why is that in there in that particular wording?
It's at the bottom of page 106, which I said I would go back to, but I will. Steve?
Thank you, Leader. This is a modification that has been put in by the reporter. It's not something that that we supported or advocated when we made our submission to the examination. It's been put in response to representations. Clearly, what the reporter is trying to do is to ensure that there is additional protection afforded to historic gardens and designed landscapes in terms of protecting them from development proposals that could have a detrimental impact on them. And they feel that introducing paragraph C strengthens that protection.
Okay, page 107. Jane?
Yes, please. Could I have some clarification of the officers with respect to the natural environment, item 11, where the reporter wants to remove any mention of the Merrick? Does this mean that there are no areas of search for natural wild areas in Dumfries and Galloway? Could I have clarification? Is that why that's been removed?
It's in page 107, is it?
Sorry, Leader, could I just ask for clarification which of the paragraphs on page 107 are, because they're all numbered 11 and 157.
Sorry, I'm struggling as well. It refers to page 37 on the LDP, according to my notes here, and it's amend the final two sentences of paragraph 4.48.
Right. Okay. So it's the second box down on page 107.
Second box down on page 107.
Okay.
Steve?
This one. The reference in here to wild land, this was a process that the Scottish Government have been going through to formally designate areas of wild land, and my understanding is that those designations do include the area around Merrick. I think the reason that the specific reference has been taken out is because there are other areas of wild land which are also designated, and probably the reporter didn't want to prejudge the official designations coming through in National Planning Framework 3, which has only just been published.
Leader, I think my fears are calmed. So what you're saying is it's not merely that there are no areas of search in D&G, it means there might be more than one. Thank you very much indeed.
Colin?
Just on that, I think they were published recently, and there are two. I don't think they're that much bigger than my garden, I have to say, but there are two in the region that have been designated. So how do you deal with the fact that part of the document is now historical? Because the column will say the council will consider produce supplementary guidance once areas of wild land have been formally designated. From what I can gather, they have been formally designated. They've certainly been published by SNH. So effectively that would make that statement out of date now, would it not? I mean, how do we deal with sort of when these statements have been made, things are moving, and you know the designation's now been made of two areas, which won't have much of an impact in this region at all. But I'm just wondering how we deal with sort of historical changes like that.
Steve?
Well, I think I understand the point that these areas have now been formally designated. I think that final sentence still makes sense. It's still a statement of fact, which is that the reporters are saying that the council will consider producing supplementary guidance once these areas are formally designated, that means essentially that we can now get on and do that right away because they are designated.
Okay, page 108. Jane?
Sorry, Leader, I don't want to hog this if anybody else wants to say something, but... renewable energy, it is number 190, paragraph, the second one, insertion of a new sentence at the end of paragraph 4.87. I think I've got this right. Yes. In all cases, particular attention will be paid to the need for sensitive siting and design, including the consideration of alternatives. I'm sorry, I just don't understand what on earth's meant by that. And I don't understand the justification. Appears to focus the scope of the policy so that higher level alternatives are not included. I really need a little bit of help on this one, please.
Okay, can you clarify that, Steve? I'll give you 30 seconds to confer.
Sorry, Leader. We're just cross-checking with the actual full reporter's final report, just to remind ourselves of exactly what was said. This was an amendment or a modification that came forward from us to the reporters unit, although they have actually changed it slightly. They've changed the wording of it slightly. In terms of the consideration of alternatives, this relates to policy IN1, which is the overall framework for assessing all forms of renewable energy other than wind energy and energy recovery from waste. So what they're suggesting is that in addition to particular attention being paid to the need for sensitive siting and design, including the consideration of alternatives. In other words, what alternatives are there in terms of renewable energy generation options at that location?
Does it clear things up for you, Jane?
Yes, thank you.
Leader, I must apologise if I appear to be struggling, but I'm trying to interpret what the reporter has said here. So
we do understand the difficulties. Page 109. Oh, page 110. This kind of overlaps a wee bit as well into the next page, but Jane?
I would just ask about the issue with respect to the asterisk. Do you see that footnote? Acceptability will determine through an assessment of the details of the proposal, including its benefits and the extent to which its environmental and cumulative impacts can be satisfactorily addressed. I don't understand what that means. Yes, it's 109. It's 109, Leader. Second paragraph on 109. Page 109.
Yeah. You're saying you're going back again, you moved to 110.
Where's the asterisks?
What does it mean?
Page 110 and 13, is that where you're talking about? From there, part 1.
Leader, this full council meeting, it's turning into a member officer working group.
Okay, we won't go back again to 109, and I take it it's the I still can't see the place you're talking about.
Leader, the second box down, you see there's an asterisk with the word acceptability. Second box down, 109. Second box down, 109.
Okay. So acceptability will determine through an assessment of the details of the proposal, including its benefits and extent to which its environmental and cumulative impacts can be satisfactorily addressed. What does it mean?
I think the first thing is that there appears to be a typo in there, in that
Can I ask, just before you go on, can I ask, there's a lot of background noise here, so if you can keep that down, then maybe the officers will be able to make some clearer, and members might be able to understand what they're saying. So if we can keep the background noise down, and Steve?
There appears to be a typo, first of all, in that that should actually say acceptability will be determined through an assessment of the details of the proposal, and that would make it consistent with the same phrase which is repeated over the page. On page 110, the second box there, you'll see the reporter also uses the same terminology there. The council will assess the acceptability with an asterisk, and the asterisk, which is explained further on page 111, says acceptability will be determined through an assessment of the details of the proposals. I think the reason that the reporter has put that in is just to make it absolutely clear that when the reference is made to acceptability, that is prescribed in the policy. In other words, it's not for the council just simply to decide whether something is acceptable or not in broad terms, that there is actually a prescription in here that says we can only decide whether it's acceptable on the following basis.
Does that answer your question, Jane?
Thank you, Leader.
So I think that's taking care of 109, 110, 111. And can we move on to... I know it is very difficult, and because the numbering of it, you can have 10 252s, you can have 10 14s, you can. That's why I'm doing it a page at a time, even though it seems the best thing to do, because it's difficult with the paragraphs. Okay, page 113. Jane?
Look, I am sorry, Leader, and I forgive me for going back, but if you consider the wind energy issue, could I possibly ask about the removal of cumulative sensitivity zones from our policy with respect to because they were...
Could you go back to what page it is and where it actually is, so that everybody knows?
Yeah, yes, Leader, I
There we
will.
are. And I do understand about the confusion and about how it's laid out, and I understand that. So that's why they have this leeway here for people to just get their heads around things.
I appreciate your flexibility, Leader. This is with respect to... oh dear, where are we? It's to do with cumulative sensitivity zones, my understanding is that these have been, where they were essential originally in RLDP, originally they were essential to achieving and maintaining a coherent pattern of development and avoiding coalescence between potential clusters. They were originally no-go areas. Now, I just need to understand, I was left with the impression that they were not areas where developers were encouraged to look. Whereas this change here that has been made in this new in 1 and in 2 in particular, indicates that that's not the case. Can I please have some understanding? I battled with this, grappled with it, and I don't really totally understand the changes that have been made and the impact it will have upon what we did have as policies and what is a policy now.
So is this an IN1 and IN2, or is it that you're talking about? Or?
I think this is policy IN2.
Yes.
On page 110, going over onto page 111
Correct.
and continuing onto the top of page 112. The issue in relation to cumulative sensitivity, the policy as recommended by the reporter to us is in two parts. The first part contains the criteria against which all wind farm proposals will be assessed. And one of those criteria is cumulative impact. I'm also happy to say that another of the criteria is landscape and visual impact, and in particular, the extent to which the proposal addresses the guidance contained in the Dumfries and Galloway wind farm landscape capacity study. And this was a point that was argued extensively as part of the examination process, that we wanted to see that retained in our policy. And I'm pleased to see that the reporter has accepted that and has included it, has left it, reference to it in the proposed policy. The point about spatial frameworks, which is part 2 of the new policy, which is on page 111. In terms of our spatial framework, which formed part of our local development plan, the reporter is suggesting that the spatial framework needs to be looked at again, and it should be labelled as interim, and has set out the approach that we need to take in terms of looking again at our spatial framework. However, there is still reference to both cumulative impact. If you look at the bullet point that's headed areas of significant protection, so these, if you like, were the red areas in terms of the spatial framework. There is still reference to areas where a presumption against development applies due to significant constraints. And included in that list is areas where the cumulative impact of existing and consented wind farms limit further development. So there is still specific reference to cumulative impact. Cumulative sensitivity zones, however, we can then map as a potential constraint. So it's almost a two-pronged approach where we can take account of cumulative impact as part of designating areas of significant protection, but also we can separately map our cumulative sensitivity zones. And these are areas where we can address potential future cumulative impact. So this is not looking at purely existing and consented wind farms, but this is looking actually at the landscape and its future ability to absorb further wind farm development. And what the reporter is saying is that that needs to be mapped as a potential constraint, and not as an area of significant protection. Does that make sense?
Jane?
Thank you. So I don't know whether I've got this right, but I read this carefully 2 or 3 times, and I believe that our policies have been weakened. That's what I believe has been the case. Would the officer be willing to
have an opinion on that?
Have an opinion on that. Thank you very much. Yes.
My observation on that is that they haven't been weakened anything like as much as they could have been.
So it's yes. Archie?
It's just on that particular point here. Obviously, in that top box on page 112, talking about the interim spatial framework maps, we went through quite a large process of making sure that the areas within Dumfries and Galloway, as far as we were concerned, were right for wind farms and types like that, and the typologies of those different types of wind farms. As it's an interim spatial framework, does that mean that we stick to what we've got at the moment and we have to do a review of that, and how long will that actually take?
Leader, that's quite correct. We have to now label the spatial framework as interim. However, it is still part of will still be part of the newly adopted local development plan, so it will still have some fundamental status in terms of determining planning applications in the short term. The process for reviewing the spatial framework and developing that into new supplementary guidance is a process that we're still considering. We are required to bring forward to members our proposed action plan following on from adoption of the LDP, which sets out the programme for all of the pieces of supplementary guidance and the timescales associated with them. And it's my intention to bring that report to the EEI committee in September. So at this stage, we're still actually waiting for the Scottish Government to update their online guidance for spatial frameworks for wind energy. Until they've done that, we don't know exactly how much work is going to be involved in reviewing and revisiting the spatial framework. All I can refer members to is the considerable amount of time and effort that was involved in producing the interim wind energy policy that preceded the LDP. There was a considerable effort that was put into the technical aspects of that, and also into the public consultation aspects of it. Given that there is a wide public interest in this area, we will have to go through a full public consultation process with any draft supplementary guidance that we produce, which includes the revised spatial framework.
Okay, right, I'm going to try something else. If you go into page 112 to infrastructure, which then passes over to page 113, that whole block in infrastructure, are there any questions on that? No? On the page 113, there's a paragraph in transport. Nothing on that. And page 113 at the bottom is proposals, maps and appendices and glossary. It goes on to page 114. Anything on that? No. On page 114, settlement statements and inset maps, that goes on to page 115. Anything in that? On page 115, you've got the Annan HMA local centres. Anything? Page 115 again, you've got the SDL HMA, which is 2 paragraphs. Anything on that? Again, page 115, going on to page 116, it's the Dumfries housing. It goes on to page 116, 117, and 118. So that's from the bottom of page 115 to the middle of page 118, and that's on Dumfries housing. I'll give you a minute or two of that, seeing it's more than one page. This includes your Ladyfield sites, Heath Hill, College, Barn Hill. Oh. Okay. Right, page 118, halfway down, Dumfries business and industry, retail and general issues. That goes on to a line in page 119, sorry. Ian?
Thank you, Leader. I do have a question in page 116 regarding Dumfries housing. First paragraph. Development opportunities, South Dumfries. As you read the master plan for Crichton campus, this may represent a vehicle to ensure an integrated approach to development in the wider area. I recently submitted an EMBS regarding Southern Bypass. With the Southern Bypass coming into this particular section, I'm looking for comment.
Does the Dumfries bypass come into the Crichton development part? The Crichton campus development part? Steve?
In terms of development opportunities in South Dumfries, the reporter is indicating both here and in their response to one or two other related issues, the DGRI site, which is in the next box down, and also some comments about Ladyfield, that what the reporter is setting out in their proposed wording is that the council has to work with all of the partners who are promoting developments in that area in order to address the cumulative impacts of the individual development sites. So the Crichton campus, the redevelopment of the DGRI, and the future development of Ladyfield have all got to be looked at together in terms of their cumulative impact potentially on things like transport infrastructure. So any issues to do with the transport infrastructure will be looked at through what the reporter refers to as a South Dumfries development framework, which we now have to prepare.
Okay, right, can we go back to business and industry? Ian, you wanted in on that today?
It wasn't really, it was actually the point that Jens brought up there. And just in regard, I thought that there was a role to play in National Planning Framework 3 in regards to that. As much as there's a link to the LDP, I thought NPF 3 was actually important when it came to the southern link for the Dumfries.
Steve?
There is no reference in MPF 3 to that aspect in terms of infrastructure improvement. So it would be through the LDP that we would need to promote this.
Okay, page 118, Dumfries business and industry, retail and general issues, and it's a sentence on the top of page 119 as well. This covers the Cargan Bridge, Heath Hall, and Curry's Penmans. Andy?
Thanks, Leader. You seem to have a bother. You seem to have a bother spotting me sometimes. On page 116, DFS H1 Barn Hill. I hadn't finished because I'd been up. My hand had been up for quite a considerable time. That's what I was suggesting, Leader. Before you actually finished that portion with Dumfries housing.
Right. Okay. I'll let you ask the question.
Okay then. It's second bottom box on page 116 about DFS H1 Barn Hill. It's add the following additional sentence: a drainage and ground investigation study should be submitted. How does that impact on the current planning applications that are in there? Is this a recognition that there is a huge drainage and water problem in that area?
Leader, no, this doesn't have any implications for current planning applications. This is specifically in relation to this future site allocation at Barn Hill, and I think it is a recognition by the reporter of some of the concerns that were expressed by local residents in their responses to the proposed plan consultation. And in fact, this additional wording was something that the council itself also agreed as a modification, and we submitted that into the examination as the council's position. So what the reporter has done is now basically supported the council's position on this.
Yeah, so there's no change there. Okay, page 118 again. Dumfries Business and Retail and General Issues, which overlaps onto page 119. Questions? No? Page 119, this is Marfet, and it goes on to page 120 and overlaps into page 121. Sorry, it just goes on to 120. Yep. No. Page 120, Lochmaben, which goes on to 121. No. Page 121, it's the Dumfries HMA District Centres. This is Kirkconnell, Lochmaben, and it goes on to page 122. No. 122, which is Dumfries HMA Local Centres, which goes on to page 123. Alistair.
Thanks, Leader. I'm looking at the box about Glen Capel, and in particular the second sentence of the narrative, which says it may be possible to demonstrate this by means of a master plan, etc. I'm not quite clear what this sentence means. Does it mean that we will go to looking at existing data in terms of how it can inform us regarding the possibility or not of flooding? That's my first point. Is that what that means? Is that what that sentence means?
Steve?
Yes, I mean, it essentially is saying that it might be possible that by careful design of the layout on this site, taking into account level information and the bed bank and water levels, that it might be possible to demonstrate that there is no unacceptable flood risk. If that's not possible, then a full flood risk assessment would be required. This was, again, an amendment to the plan that was agreed previously by ourselves in September. So this was a modification that we had previously indicated we would be willing to accept.
Alistair.
Thank you. At what point do we reach a conclusion that no, this modelling, based on the data we have, is insufficient, and we must move to a flood risk assessment? Or is that a bit difficult to judge? Is that sort of how many angels can dance on the head of a pin sort of thing?
It's essentially a technical issue that's going to become more evident as part of the planning application process when we would consult with our own colleagues in the flood risk management team.
Okay, Ivor.
Thank you, Leader. It's with regard to page 123, second box, the pen punt inset map. We've actually, for some reason, taken part of the village out of the actual village, and I don't think that's what should actually be happening. And could it have a detrimental effect on the bottom one there, where you've got reference to facilitating pedestrian movement? If you actually take part of the village out of the village, will we be having difficulty for the residents who now aren't part of the village walking to the actual village?
Will they need their passport, Steve?
Essentially, by excluding that site from the settlement boundary, the intention behind that clearly is to try to prevent any infill development occurring at some point in the future. So it's fundamentally about trying to control future development and to restrict it to within the village envelope, which is why the reporter has made this recommendation. Clearly, that site, PNTH1, was a site that the council had put forward in its proposed plan, and is one that we advocated through the examination process, but the reporter has reached a different conclusion from us.
It's still on page 123, which is Mid-Galloway HMA District and Local Centres, and that goes on to page 126. Alistair?
Thanks very much indeed, Leader. Can I have the rationale behind the first narrative there explained to me, sir? It's on the inset map, extend the town centre boundary as shown in the Council's core document, 91. What's the rationale behind that, Leader, if I may, please?
Okay.
This modification is proposed by the reporter in response to representations received that the town centre boundary, as we had originally drawn it, was actually too tightly defined, and that it should be expanded to include some of the supermarkets. In particular, I think the Sainsbury's supermarket, as we had originally drawn the boundary, was excluded from the town centre boundary, and in response to, I think in particular, there were representations made by Sainsbury's and others, and the reporter has decided to acknowledge those and direct us to change the boundary.
If I may with your leave, sir, so my memory is not quite as bad as I thought it was. Yes, it was indeed Sainsbury's. So what's the rationale behind that? Presumably the inference is that if you include Sainsbury's in the town centre boundary, any subsequent application that comes in, and albeit I accept, Leader, what I'm saying is speculative at this moment in time, but any further application that comes in for a future such development in Newton Stewart may be hung on the hoop, or one of the hooks that it doesn't lie within the town centre boundary.
The any possible future retail proposals would be assessed in line with the retail policies in the LDP, which, as you know, have a sequential test where essentially operators have to demonstrate, first of all, that they have considered town centre sites, and only then are we allowed to consider sites on the edge of the town centre or indeed out of town. I think there were actually some counter-representations seeking an even broader definition of the town centre boundary to include possible future retail sites right on the edge of Newton Stewart, but the reporter has declined to go with these and has actually said that there's no basis on which to extend the town centre to include those. I think the purpose, again, I'm reading into what the reporter was getting at here. I think the reporter accepted that the existing retail facilities are an important component of the town centre in Newton Stewart, and that the boundary should reflect that.
I'm grateful, Leader. In other words, it was as I suspected. You know, there's obviously manoeuvring going on in the background. That's the world in which we live, sir. Thank you.
Okay, if you can go on to page 126, which is the statutory HMA district centres, and that goes on to page 128. So that's 126, and it goes on to 128. Finlay?
Thanks, Chair. I've got two concerns that the reporter's made decisions based on non-planning considerations. The first one's Dalbeattie, and the notes that that we got presented as groups. Suggesting one of the reasons that a plot is taken out is because it would require an upgrading of existing poor access. Surely that's not a reason for taking out the local plan. Another one which is more concerning and it will have potential impacts for planning applications in the future is the Gatehouse of Fleet, where the reporter has made a decision based on the fact that any future development would have an impact on the outlook of other properties, in this case namely a nursing home. Surely that opens the floodgates potentially for objections to every single planning permission where someone feels that their view or whatever has been blocked. You know, again, this is something that probably can't change, but I think we need to have some sort of a note in the minutes with regards to how our planning department will consider objections in the past, because this may lead to objections and appeals if a precedent set with us accepting this.
Steve, do you want to comment?
In relation to the site at Dalbeattie, then certainly concerns about access to a site is a material consideration, and it's something that we would expect any assessment of a site to include. I think it's worth saying that that's not the only reason that was quoted by the reporter, and I think this is referred to in our covering report on at the top of page 12. It's recommended that the site be deleted. The reporter was of the view that the site forms an attractive green wedge and provides a good setting for the existing houses. Development would be undesirable and inappropriate, as it would detract considerably from the amenity of the land and would require upgrading of the existing poor access. So I think there are some clear planning reasons provided as to why the reporter decided to delete that site. With regard to the site H4 Fleet Street, Gatehouse of Fleet, the reference, as you say, is quite unusual in terms of the reliance on loss of outlook. The reporter has justified this by relating it to the specific circumstances surrounding the fact that this is a nursing home, and I think the reporter's decision letter actually makes reference to vulnerable members of the community, and that should be taken into consideration. The reporter does also clarify in their full report that loss of outlook is not normally, and I think that's the word that they use, is not normally a consideration, but the reporter felt that in the particular circumstances here, that it was correct and valid to take it into account. So I don't think it sets a precedent as you're concerned about for other developments. I think the reporter has made it quite clear that it's specifically about the circumstances of having a group of vulnerable residents to whom, because they are largely confined to the property across the road, the impact on their amenity in the view of the reporter is unacceptable.
Okay, that's finally just trying to confuse me. They're jumping to local centres again. To the district to the local. But we'll go into the local, straight to the local centres now, which is 128, 129 and 130. Jane?
Sorry, Leader, I did actually ask to speak, and you've gone on. If you remember, I did.
Sorry, I didn't see you there, Jane. Sorry.
Thank you. This is about the Castle Douglas Showfield site. It's a very prominent site, and originally I remember the area committee took great care when it was dealing with the Tesco application next door to it, talking about the impact on the entrance to the town. Is that then fully taken account of with respect to how this is developed? I'll also say that anybody who's been to the Stewartry show, and I'm talking about 5-10 years ago, will remember what happens on that piece of ground. It's like an earthquake. So it's built on the old council's septic tanks. So I just wonder about the actual feasibility of that. Does that come under contaminated land or unstable land?
I can only refer you to the reporters. Bearing in mind, this is a site that the reporter added in, and it's not one that we advocated in our proposed plan, and it's not one that we advocated as part of the examination process. The reporter's findings, and this is what they actually say by way of explanation. For their conclusion in their final report. The Showfield site comprises fields on the northeastern edge of Castle Douglas, forming an extensive wedge rising uphill to the east and north from existing development. It is reasonably well placed for access to the town centre. The landscape assessment in the main issues report states that partial development with mitigation may be acceptable. Although this is a prominent location, the council considers that the lower part of the land could be acceptable for housing development subject to a minor flooding issue and appropriate landscape treatment. The upper part is considered to be visually exposed. So these were the factors that the reporter took into consideration in terms of agreeing with the objector to release this site for development. I think it's going to be very important for us in terms of how we word the site guidance in the modified plan to make sure that some of those concerns that we had previously expressed are captured. And in particular, I think the point that you're making is correct about the prominence of the frontage, and we would certainly want to make sure that we take all steps through the site guidance to ensure that that line of trees and the stone dyke, which provide a good degree of screening of the site, is kept intact as part of any future development of part of that field.
Thank you, Leader. I mean, I think this all just goes to show, really, it's local knowledge and understanding. I mean, to get viable sites, and sometimes when you don't have an opportunity to change things through the democratic process locally, you sometimes get odd things being thrown up. Thank you, Leader.
Finlay.
Thanks, Chair. I suppose it's on the back of that again. Am I correct in understanding that based on evidence of objectors or people who submitted to the plan, that this site was then brought forward, but the council planning department didn't then have an opportunity to go and put their view as to why it shouldn't be included? The other thing that concerns me is that and we've gone past it, but the Creetown site is when we had a land within a plan removed without the people who had actually owned that land being consulted. And we have the same in Castle Douglas, where we've got areas that are owned by...
Sorry, can you hold on a second? You started talking about something...
I mentioned Cretan. Aye.
Stick to the script.
Thanks, Chair. In Castle Douglas we had the same issue where there was sites removed from the plan, but there was no consultation with the people who owned that site before they were removed. Now, in this instance, they were all owned by Wallet Smart, but they were not aware until this came out that one of their plots was actually removed.
Yeah, I mean, these are kind of wider issues about the examination process and the LDP process. As part of the examination, it's at the reporter's discretion as to who they consult with, who they ask for additional information from. What they do have in front of them is everything that has been submitted as part of the LDP process to date. So all of the original comments, representations, objections, together with the council's response to those, which effectively constitutes the council's case, all of that information was sent to the reporters at the start of the examination process and was assessed by the reporters as part of the process. In some circumstances, reporters decide that they need further information either from ourselves or from other parties to the plan, i.e. landowners that are proposing sites, or indeed consultees or objectors that have made comments on the plan. But that's very much in the discretion of the reporter, and they will only ask for clarification and further information where they feel it is fundamental to their coming to a conclusion and making recommendations on that particular issue.
Right, before we bring you in over, can I bring Graham back in, or? Right, can we get Graham back in? If you just like standing in the doorway there, Graham. Ivor?
Chair, with regard to the Castle Douglas site and the local knowledge that was imparted to us about it not being a stable site, etc., was that information actually given to the reporter? And as such, could he make a suitable decision or a reasonable decision that he has actually put a site that isn't developable into the plan? Because if he didn't know that it's not stable, how would he know whether it could be developed on?
So is there any comeback in that?
The site was originally assessed as part of the main issues report. The site was originally proposed as an early stage in the LDP process, so there was an assessment that was carried out of the site, and all of that information was made available to the reporter.
They made the decision on with the full knowledge.
Did that include that it wasn't a stable site, that information, or was it just that it wasn't deemed suitable because it was felt that it was a prominent position?
It wouldn't include information on ground conditions. It would include any information about contamination. If it was a known contaminated site, that would have been flagged up.
Okay, this time we're moving on to it's page 128, which is the Stewart HMA local centres. That's 128, 129 and 130. Oh, sorry. Can you bring George back in? Okay, any questions on that? That's middle of page 128. This is local centre, Stuart, local centres, 128, 129 and 130. No. Moving on to Stranraer, HA district and local centres, the headings on 130, but the pages, the meets on 131 and the very top are 132. Jim?
Yeah, thanks, Leader. It's regarding the top one, number 29. Stranraer STR H2, H3 and H4. I take it the explanation for what we're wanting to put in there was the same as previously, i.e. there are site problems that they may involve flooding.
Yeah, that's correct. This is, again, almost setting out a two-stage process where those issues could be overcome through careful master planning and layout of the future development. If that's not able to demonstrate to our satisfaction that the flood risk has been properly addressed, then a full assessment would be required.
Yeah, thanks. That gives me a nice in. On page 615 of the report that the reporter has put out on the conclusions, I'm not going to mention the site. I think everybody in here will know the site that I'm talking about. The reporter quite clearly says that the council is resisting this additional housing site on the basis that the existing allocations provide an adequate supply of more suitable locations. As far as I'm aware, the site that was proposed has no flooding risk, and it was brought up at every opportunity I had during the LDP process, and the only thing that seemed to stop it from getting in was officers, and now it appears the reporter not actually listening to what was being said, not just by the person that actually put it in, but councillors that were actually making comments. I know that it was said that we have a 500 unit capacity for Stranraer, but when you look at what the reporter then says for Portpatrick, which the Community Council objected to, the amount of land that was being, let's say, something up to 190 units, the area of lands in Portpatrick that they're given, that's 38% of the total of Stranraer, and I'm just wanting to voice my disappointment that neither the council nor the reporter actually listened.
Okay, disappointment's been voiced. Nobody else? Page 132, which is the business and industry sites. This is the end of Appendix 3. No. That leaves us going to the recommendations. John?
Leader, I wonder if we could have a tiny victory over the reporters unit, a tiny, tiny victory on page 135. The Lockerbie overview, paragraph 2, this is in the middle, number 134, page 134 of the local development plan. Our officers wrote correctly, grammatically, that Lockerbie is an historic market town. And the reporters unit doesn't like that. They put it's a historic market town. Well, can I suggest that we put back what the officers said because they're correct?
So we change A or change it back to Anne. Yep, that's fine, we'll do that. We'll bother them into doing that.
Yeah, we'll change that back.
Yeah.
Thanks, Leader. I would agree if we get into the recommendation, but I did say just a couple of points I'd like to have made. I would agree with the recommendations contained within the report. You've been through it in great detail. I think the most important thing about what we will agree today, I'm sure, is how we actually monitor and see it goes forward. We used to have a member officer working group. I would imagine once this is adopted by default, that'll fall. I think that should be that or something should replace it. We should look at that, certainly in reference to the LDB2 as we go forward. So the next local development plan, how that's monitored. I think we need to look closely at and keep monitoring that, whether it's through that or through performance plan and performance reports that come to committee, at how the policies that we've agreed today, or we will agree out potentially then ratified by Scottish Government, how the interpretation through the planning committee compared to what we feel as councillors, how they should be getting interpreted. How effective the plan has been, will be, may be, and supplementary planning guidance. We need to get a clear understanding how that's linked in it. There was a great level of discussion yesterday at the Economy, Environment and Infrastructure Committee in regards to how planning guidance, it was planning guidance from Scottish Government, how that links into Scottish planning policy. I think that debate, we need to go forward, and as members we need to understand fully how the supplementary planning guidance relates to local development plan and the weight that has. I think it's important that we get to that understanding. That's just a few comments. I'd like maybe Steve to say a couple of words in regards to how we do look to monitor this, how we do look to see how we watch the local development plan, how it's progressed, and possibly is it got to be a member working group or member officer working group, how will that go forward? Because there has been, I think, a slightly democratic deficit in this process, and that's been picked up by all members and all groups, I think. So as we go forward, it needs to be more of a political document, LDP2.
Do you want to make a comment, Steve?
Yes, please, Leader. Certainly the intention with regard to the review of the plan is that we carry out regular monitoring of the effectiveness of the plan, both in terms of whether the policies are being effective, in terms of achieving the outcomes that was intended, and also are the site allocations effective? In other words, are developments actually coming forward on those sites? And if not, we have to keep that under review as part of our review of the effective housing land supply. So there will be reports coming forward to EEI committee. We will still have to do an annual update report in terms of our development plan scheme, and we can use that as a vehicle for reporting to members the monitoring of the plan as well. Clearly we've got to leave the plan for a reasonable period of time for it to start to take effect. So I would suggest, it's probably going to be 18 months before we're in a position to bring the first monitoring report forward. The monitoring is going to be important in terms of informing any changes or tweaks that we need to make as part of LDP2, because although our covering report refers to the purpose of the LDP being to guide future land use and development until 2024, we've actually got a duty to review the plan every 5 years. So at no point must the plan become more than 5 years old. Now, given the length of time that it takes to get through these extensive statutory processes, that essentially means that as soon as this plan is adopted, we're almost immediately starting to think about the timetable for the review leading into LDP2. And as part of that, we will be presenting members with options in terms of the management of LDP2 process, which may include member officer working groups or subcommittees or project boards. I think essentially that's going to be something that we would bring forward to the EEI committee for a decision on in due course. But I take the point, and it's certainly something that we're keen to do is to maximise member engagement in this process, because it's absolutely essential that there is a collective sense of ownership. These are the council's policies and the council's plan, and it's essential that we have that collective sense of ownership.
Yeah.
Just a really quick, and just to place on record from certainly from my group to Steve, Andrew and Shona for all the hard work they have put in. I'm sure they've been frustrated a lot of times, but thanks very much for that.
Yeah. Craig.
Thank you, Leader. It's just a clarification really from Steve that once we get to the actual stage that this plan will now be adopted and it goes back to the reporter as we can see through the papers. Once that comes back and we can officially adopt it, then will all the different sections of the supplementary guidance documents that accompany the plan, because I appreciate there are different sections to cover different actions within the plan, will they all be in place at the same time, so that once it's officially adopted, all the supplementary guidance for the different areas are in place and will all be taking place at the same time? So it's from day one of the adoption, everything is there to move forward.
I wish the answer to that was yes. Unfortunately, the supplementary guidance has got to be individually considered and agreed by the EEI committee. So what we'll be doing is, as soon as the plan is adopted, we will start bringing back some of the supplementary guidance has already been produced in draft form and has been out to public consultation. So the first task will be to bring those ones back to committee with the outcome of the consultation, and then asking the committee to agree to adopt those as supplementary guidance. There's also a work plan of all of the new pieces of supplementary guidance that we have to produce, and again we'll be asking the EEI committee to agree that work plan. Some of the supplementary guidance has actually arisen from some of the reporters' recommendations. The reporters actually asking us to do supplementary guidance on new things, so we're going to have to factor that into our work plan.
Oh, sorry, Craig.
I'll just come back for a moment, thanks. Well, if that's the case then, Steve, what sort of impact might that have on applications coming in the future concerned with the new plan if we don't have the supplementary guidance in place to move them forward? I mean, will that delay the application until the supplementary has been adopted, or could you just clarify that situation, please?
No, it shouldn't delay the determination of planning applications. It's up to us to put the supplementary guidance in place as quickly as we can. We can refer to draft supplementary guidance. So even once it's drafted, we can start to refer to it and to use it in terms of dealing with developers and dealing with planning applications.
Okay,
Chair, it's maybe a follow on from that. By going through the process today, and if we adopt it, because we haven't got to there yet, or agree to adopt it, what weight will this carry in planning determinations after today? Is it now the one that we should be, as we are agreeing to adopt it, should it be the one that we take as the primacy, or should we still work with the current one, with this just being a material consideration, so that we know when planning applications committees come up next week, I think it is, which one we should be looking at?
Leader, the timescale, should these recommendations be accepted today, the timescale for completing the formal adoption process is likely to be around the middle to the end of September. So from that point onwards, the LDP becomes the adopted local plans, and we can shred the 4 existing local plans and structure plan. Until that time, we're in a kind of interim period. However, as we have been through the examination process and we have agreed to accept reporters' recommendations, we can give what I would describe as significant weight to the LDP as opposed to the existing adopted local plans. We can certainly make sure that planning applications committee members are given advice on that should the situation arise at planning applications committee meetings.
Okay, thanks. Can move to the recommendations. Can we note 2.1, 2.2? Can we agree 2.3? Can we delegate authority to the head of planning 2.4, 2.5? Agree 2.6, adoption. And 2.7, delegate authority to the head of planning regulatory. Okay, Archie, you want in?
Yeah, just to come along with what Councillor Carr said earlier, just to record our thanks for the amount of work that the team's actually done on this particular thing, sir. And I think, you know, the the decision process after it's been to council needs to be looked at, because obviously local democracy needs to be involved in this as well. We are elected by members of the public in Dumfries and Galloway. It is a quasi-legal planning application committee to make decisions, but I think it's really important to make sure that we record our thanks for Steve and make sure democracy lives in Dumfries and Galloway as well when we come to decisions.
Chair, if appropriate, or does the council think it would be appropriate that we possibly add at 2.8 that we wish to note that we're not comfortable with the process we had to go through? I don't know what the formal words would be, but I think there's a general consensus that some of the processes we haven't been happy with.
A bit another point, but I mean, we could record that.
Certainly happy to record it as a procedural note. Because you're adopting the local plan and it's a bit awkward to adopt it and say we don't agree with it.
Okay, thanks very much, Archie. You saved my speech to the thanking officers. Okay, I have no other business. Thank you.